Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is David and today I'm going to share with you the second part of my bookshelf tour. Let's start here right on the top, on the left-hand side of the shelf. There's an edition of the works of Honoré de Balzac, this French author. It's not a complete edition, but I think it's about his major works. He's famous for his big series of novels called Comédie Humaine, or The Human Comedy. I think it was planned to have about 140 novels, and as he died young at the age of 49, he was only able to finalize about 90 of his novels. And they're called novels, but some of them are rather short, even more the type of novella. So this collection of 8 volumes contains several dozens of the novels of his Comédie Humaine. You will see that this is not the French original, this is a German translation. You will see many French literature in German translation this shelf, because until recently I was not able to read the French original. French is one of my most recent foreign languages. It's only 1 year that around about that I'm able to read French literature in the original. So in the past I had to rely on translations into German or English. And I haven't read all of the novels of Balzac, so there's still a lot to explore. Right next to it there's the works of the Swiss-German pedagogical writer Johann Heinrich Pestalozzi. At least in the German-speaking country, his pedagogical concepts in the late 18th, early 19th century were famous and groundbreaking, a completely new approach how to raise and educate children. And he also wrote a novel called Lienhard and Gertrud. It's a kind of a didactic novel where, in the form of a novel, he tries to also to deliver on his messages about the pedagogical concepts. And it's not of an extremely high literary quality, I'd say, but it's rather interesting from the historical point of view. If you're interested in the history of pedagogics, it's interesting. And on the right-hand side here, we have a few volumes and English originals of novels written by Charles Dickens. These are not all my Dickens novels, but here I have put together all those from the series Oxford Illustrated Dickens, a nice series. Usually hardcover, some of them even cloth-bound, and they also have the original illustrations, which also makes them quite nice to look at. Okay, moving down on the next level in this shelf, you may notice that I tend to group my books by color in order to make the bookshelves look a little bit more harmonious or harmonic. I don't know the English word exactly. So, but these are almost all books from my favorite publisher in German language, the Manesse Verlag from Switzerland in Zurich. And they have a series they call Library of World Literature. So it's a world literature series like Oxford World Classics, I think so, where they issue original works. They issue translations into German from literary classics from all over the world, and it's really, you can buy any of them. I am not going through all of them or these volumes, that wouldn't make sense, but I like to pick out a few less known authors. For example, Björnstjerne Bjørnson, a once famous Norwegian author who also won the Nobel Prize in 1903. Nowadays, I think he's almost forgotten outside Norway, but it's worth to be discovered. And a second author I'm going to present is an Italian author. Even long before I learned Italian, I read a lot of Italian literature, and this is, I think, one of the most known classics of Italian literature from the 19th century, The Betrothed by Alessandro Manzoni. Okay, what I'm going to pick next, yeah, it's not only European and literature from the 18th, 19th, and 20th century, but also more antique literature and from really other parts of the world, like, for example, this book from the Pillow Book by Sei Shōnagon at the Japanese court. Written around about the year 1000, that really gives an insight into this for us Europeans, very strange medieval Japanese society. Another precious novel here is from the French author Joris-Karl Huysmans. I think it has been published in English with two different titles, either Against the Grain or Against Nature. It's a novel that was highly appreciated by Oscar Wilde. Even in his novel Picture of Dorian Gray, there one of the characters gives a short statement about this book, where he describes how strange but fascinating this book is. Okay, what am I going to present next? Yeah, an English author, Walter de la Mare. I think he's was well known for his children's book on the one hand, but he also wrote a lot of short stories, more of the horror type short stories. But he also wrote one novel, this Memoirs of a Midget. It's sort of a fictional autobiography of a midget, of a dwarf lady, with a very and she shares with us from this very specific perspective of an outsider her caustic remarks and observations of human society or English society. It's highly entertaining, but as I mentioned, also sort of a satirical, caustic humor. Okay, this is a collection of the works of the German author and Nobel Prize winner Hermann Hesse. And I don't think I need to go into detail. In the video about my literary pedigree, I have talked a little bit about Hermann Hesse and why I appreciated his works. And so let's move on. The right-hand side here, this is these are the complete works by the Russian author Fyodor Dostoevsky. There's a German edition from the late 1990s. That was I think it was 1996 where I really fell in love with Dostoevsky, and within a few weeks I devoured all of his works, and that was a very good experience. But the drawback is that now, almost 30 years later, I have forgotten almost everything, and so I need to reread some of these again. And my favorite novels are not the usual ones like the Brothers Karamazov, but it's The Demons and the novel The Idiot. These are the two that I think what's the other famous one? Crime and Punishment is the English title. And Crime and Punishment and Brothers Karamazov are probably the most well-known, but not my favorite ones. Okay, here on the left-hand side, we have Multatuli. That's a pseudonym of the Dutch author Eduard Douwes Dekker, still famous in the Netherlands, almost forgotten in Germany. This is a German translation of his novel Max Havelaar that really shows a disturbing light on the activities of the trading companies in the Dutch colonies in the late 19th century. I think this is really somewhat disturbing book due to all the atrocities and cruelties that are described there. On the right hand, right next to it, there's complete works of Georg Büchner. I don't know whether he's known outside of Germany. It's sort of a mandatory, you have to read some of his works in school, though everybody hates it. But at the later age, I came to the point where I really worshipped him, or I appreciated his works. He died very young, as you can see, and so he didn't write that much, but still it's a volume on India paper. I think it's 700 or 800 pages, and it's about 102 years old. So it was printed in 1902, and it still looks like a very fresh and crisp copy, almost like delivered by Amazon yesterday. So the 1920s were really a good time for bookmaking. So they made very nice volumes on India paper and nicely bound, and with this gilt edges and the gilt letters on the spine and on the front cover. And the same quality of book binding, I would say, is with these 4 volumes of works by the English author Thomas Hardy, which I think I read one of his novels almost 30 years ago, and then I forgot all about him, and I think I was triggered to read him by by an English booktuber, I think from Kathy from Books and Things. And so the first novel I read was The Mayor of Casterbridge, and really you may see from the post-its, I made a lot of annotations in it, and you have to be able to cope with the sometimes gloomy mood and the pessimistic world view that he sometimes has in his novels. But it's a very dense prose. It often reminded me of the writing, the style of Thomas Mann, where it's also, you have this density of symbolism, of meaning, where you have to look and analyze at the single words, where there are so many cross references to mythology, to other works of literature, a lot of intertextuality here, very dense prose, and I really like it very much. And again, really very nice volumes, and antiquarian books are not that costly. I think these books cost around 20 euros. So that's, in Germany, you will pay almost the same price for a new paperback edition. So it's really worth the effort looking at the antiquarian book market if you want to build a collection of nice books at a reasonable price. Right next to it, another Dickens. I think this is Nicholas Nickleby in a nice edition from 1899. Same type of book binding quality, thin paper. I think this is leather bound. And then we have here the brown editions of the Manesse Verlag, the Swiss publisher that I mentioned earlier, where we have seen the blue volumes, and these are the brown ones. What's here? This is Korolenko, an Ukrainian Russian author, worth to be discovered. Then, at least in Germany, a little known George Washington Cable, who wrote The Grandissimes, a very interesting novel about the southern states in the US. So very interesting description of the society in the southern states in the 19th century. And what else do we have here that I could pick out? Oh, for sure, another Russian. So there's Chekhov, Anton Chekhov, and his novels. Manesse Verlag has at least 2 volumes with novellas by Anton Chekhov. By the way, I think most of the volumes are printed on India paper, so they look small, but there's a lot of content in there. And you can't read all of the Chekhov novels in one run. These are the volumes to pick up from time to time, to read 1 or 2 novels and to enjoy them. And okay, so let's take a look at the second row. What do we have here? So this is an interesting edition of the letters of Rahel Varnhagen von Ense, Levin. She was a very important figure in the German literary and society, and she was friends with a lot of people who were active in philosophy, in the arts, in literature. And so she had a sort of a literary saloon where she brought together all these people, and with many of them she wrote a lot of letters. And so this collection gives a great insight into what happened in the cultural society, in the society of those who were active in the cultural field in Germany in the late 18th and early 19th century. And on the right-hand side, there are the complete works by Gerhart Hauptmann, a German author, Nobel Prize winner of 1912. Yeah, this I'm in a second row because I appreciate his works from the intellectual point of view, but there's not a really an emotional relationship, let's say. So it's not an author whom I fell in love with. Okay, on the next shelf, on the left-hand side, we have a couple of volumes from the Library of America, and it's sort of the reference publisher for literary classics from American authors, like the Bibliothèque de la Pléiade in France, or the Mondadori, from Mondadori in Italy, the series I Meridiani. And yeah, these are all look the same. The only difference is the color of the cloth binding, also printed on India paper with the ribbon marker. And so, yeah, if you subscribe to the series, they come without a dust jacket. On the left-hand side, in the left shelf, you see some volumes. If you buy them regularly in the shops, they come with this black and white dust jacket, where there usually is also a portrait of the author. Okay, so yeah, what do we have here? And this is, I think, yeah, Louisa May Alcott is well known, Little Women. Then we have volumes with some hard-boiled detective stories by Raymond Chandler. We have Philip K. Dick, known for his science fiction and weird fiction writings. And we have also, we have Herman Melville. He's written much more than just Moby Dick, so this is a collection of some other works written by Herman Melville, like Israel Potter, Pierre, and just a glimpse into the volumes to show how much they contain. Also printed on India paper. I think this volume is about 1,400 pages. They come with annotation, with notes, with a short biography, and also in some cases some sort of a publication history. So it's not a full-blown critical annex that is up to the scientific standards. If you're studying literary science, it's probably not enough. But for the just a little bit above average interested reader, it's far more than enough. What is provided here as additional material. And then we have the complete works of Joachim Ringelnatz. This is a German author, a very interesting one. I'm afraid that almost nothing of his works has been translated into other languages than in English or Italian. In my channel languages, I haven't found anything. So maybe you just want to skip using the timestamps to the next author. But if you're interested a little bit in German literary history, you may just listen. I mean, he's a very interesting figure. He had a very interesting life. He also a tragic figure. He always attempted to do the things where he was not well equipped to do them. So he wanted to be a sailor, and he started doing so, but he was very small. He had a big nose, and he spoke a very strong, a very heavy accent that is not that popular in Germany, the Saxonian accent, and so he was just the laughingstock of the crew. And he had to suffer a lot. He was mocked at a lot, and so he tried other professions as well. He went he tried to clothe himself like a woman and work as a fortune teller woman, mainly for prostitutes, so telling the fortune to prostitutes. He once tried to work for a publisher, but he was faking his biography. He told them that he was able to speak 5 foreign languages, and he wasn't. And so he was sacked immediately, and he died very poor and sick at an early age. So a tragic figure, but he had a very he was a genius with words, and so he wrote a lot of poems which appeared to be on the surface more of the nonsense type poems, but if you read them a second and third time, so it's not just nonsense and wordplay. There is more profundity. There's a second and third level, and he was also an author who experimented with forms. He was one of the first German authors who used the sort of collage technique for writing a short novel about the German capital Berlin, long before Alfred Döblin wrote Berlin Alexanderplatz, where he used this technique of collage. In the German video, I'm actually reading two poems here from Joachim Ringelnatz to give an idea of the type of novel of poems that he's writing. The first one is about a small particle of dust that is dancing in the air in the room and is looking at a young boy who is studying a map of Berlin, and then the dust particle says, "Oh, Berlin is such a small thing," and it enters the nostrils of the boy, and it's sneezed out and is sneezed back into the space. And the second one, it's a sort of that nonsense type of poems. And the second one, it's more a metaphorical poem where the first person narrator talks about he has difficulties with his feet, so with walking along. That means in his life he hasn't found the right shoe, he hasn't found the right ointment for his sore feet, and then something nice happens. He gets a letter, and there seems to be some money in it, and all of a sudden everything turns to the positive. So he's humming, he's walking away, enjoying drinking some wine and enjoying himself. And even bad things happen, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't relate to him. So he enjoys life. So this sort of melancholy joy. He's back to this sort of mood of melancholy joy. Okay, let's move on to the next shelf. So these are some editions of the Alfred Kröner Verlag, a publisher who specializes in publishing German edition of classics from the antiques. So I'm interested in the philosophy of the Stoa. So there's Mark Aurelius here, his I don't know, Meditations. I think the English title is Meditations, or Epictet, or also the works of Seneca, how to lead a happy life. But they're also publishing classics from the field of philosophy. So this is from the German philosophy Kant, the Critiques, or Nietzsche. Thus Spoke Zarathustra, I think is the English title. And then we move on to German literature again. Annette von Droste-Hülshoff is an early 19th century poet. She wrote a lot of poems on nature and also about her. I talked a bit in the video on my literary pedigree. So now we have French original literary classics in the French original from the Bibliothèque de la Pléiade, sort of like the Library of America. This is the French counterpart, and this is a volume with the works by the French author Guillaume Apollinaire, one of the most important French authors around about the year 1900. And I think he was the one who coined the term surrealism for this specific movement in the arts and in literature. And what I like about his poems is that he also experimented a lot with form and arranging words for poems in graphical patterns to make them represent something else. Like here it looks like a sun with the rays. So I think he was the first one to do this, to introduce this into literature, into poems. And right next to it, it's Stendhal, the pseudonym of Marie-Henri Beyle. I think he's mostly well known for his novel Red and Black. And here on the right-hand side, we have a few volumes of Yiddish literature, reprints that you can order from the Yiddish Book Center in the US. I think I've presented some of them in some of my previous videos, so I won't go into the details here. Let's move on downwards to the next level of this shelf. What we see down here is again the Manesse Verlag. You've seen the blue ones and the brown ones, and in here some of the volumes that still have the dust jacket. So I buy many of them from the antiquarian book market, and so sometimes they come with and sometimes without the dust jacket. So showing you Gogol and Jerome, Three Men in a Boat, and would like to emphasize, to point out this Finnish author, Alexis Kivi, and his novel Seven Brothers. I think this is one of the milestones and cornerstones of 19th century Finnish literature. I'm afraid he's almost unknown outside of Finland nowadays. And this is, Matteo Maximov. This is from the, there's a literature, of a traveling people, let's say, called the Roma in Europe, and this is a very specific ethnic group that in the past they did not settle and permanent, but they used to travel around and to move around, and I think this is one of the few literary works that are known in Germany from this ethnic group. Matteo Maximov, this novel, Die Ursitory, or The Ursitory, I'm quite sure it was also translated in English. Then I would like to point out another German writer, Wilhelm Raabe, who is unfortunately almost forgotten today. But this is a collection of short stories. He wrote many novels. I think some of his earlier works they are rightly forgotten, but in particular his later works, his later novels, I appreciate them very much, and maybe I'm going to make a video, a special feature video on the later novels of Wilhelm Raabe to give him some publicity and enable him to find some new readers. French literature, Canadian, the Franco-Canadian literature is also little known in Germany, but I'm glad that Manesse has one novel, a small novel written by Gabriel Roy, or Le Rue d'Altamont, the street to Altamont. It's a very nice poetic description of aging, how you look back on your life, and a very cute description of the relationship between a grandfather and a grandchild, like it's here depicted on the front cover. Finally, I would like to pick out Hjalmar Söderberg. This is a Swedish author. In his time, he was the enfant terrible. He was really a very scandalous person, because many of his public statements or works, were provocatory because they touched taboos, societal taboos. Some of his positions were thought inappropriate, and also this novel, Dr. Glass, it talks about, it's on the surface you may read it as the justification of a murder, of the assassination of a priest. So it's a bit provocative. Here we have Oscar Wilde, back German translation from the times when I was not that fluent in English. And then we have the almost complete works of Honoré Gide, a French author and Nobel Prize winner. And again, this is a German edition, because at the time I had to use a translation. You can't cover Honoré Gide in 2 or 3 sentences in such a video. Maybe it's worth making a dedicated video about him. So let's take a look at the second row. These are mainly non-fiction books, focus on history of the Jewish people, German history of India. So I also have a weak spot for history books, and so some of them are here. And the next shelf, there are the complete poems by Kurt Tucholsky. I don't know how well known he is outside of Germany. He was a journalist, an essayist, a writer, a very political writer, and also wrote very, very caustic and witty poems. Irene Nemirovsky, she's an author of Russian origin, but she wrote in French, and I'm particularly interested in her novels that deal with the problematic mother-daughter relationship. I am going to reread some of her works in French. She was tragically murdered in a German concentration camp. And then Hans Fallada. I think he's quite well known also out in English-speaking countries. Many of his works have been translated. He is a representative of the so-called movement of New Objectivism, And I think some of these are some of his early works, which are less known, more of the Bildungsroman type. Also very interesting. I think mostly his later works, What Now, Little Man, or these are better known, but the early prose is less known. And then we have, one of the deities of French literature, Gustave Flaubert, for sure, Madame Bovary. So this novel of an adultery in rural France, and then we have Salammbô, which is situated in the antique past, in ancient days, in an exotic setting and environment, and some of a collection of shorter works. And then we have Karl Kraus. Again, I don't know whether he's known outside of Germany. Like Tucholsky, he was a journalist and a very witty observer, intelligent observer of the society of his time. Also wrote a drama, a highly satirical political drama, The Last Days of Mankind. And this is a collection. And he was also the publisher of a journal that was called Die Fackel. I think it would translate as The Torch in English. And then we have, again, some history books. These are 5 volumes of a 10-volume series, German history in Eastern Europe. It talks about the history of those areas who once either belonged to Germany or were German minorities settled. And this is a sort of, there's a personal collection, because all my ancestors are from such areas in Eastern Europe that once belonged to Germany, but now are part of Poland or Russia. And I wanted to bring together the two different perspectives, how the family history told about how Germans lived together with other ethnic groups, and what the actual historic science has to say about it. And then this is the 4 volumes of a history of the family. I think this is also very interesting. I think we tend to take for granted the way our concept of how family, how much matrimony, how the parent-children relationship works, and we're not aware of how much diversity there has been and there still is, from the historical perspective and from the geographical perspective, on how different concepts of family and family relationship and kinship exist, and so this is very, very enlightening to read these books. So this is a sort of miscellaneous collection, an Italian Bible, and 2 Yiddish dictionaries, Yiddish English, and so this is a curiosity. This is the first 5 books of the Bible, the Pentateuch, in a Yiddish translation. So not German, not English, not Hebrew, but in Yiddish. And it's a reprint. Okay, that's it for today. This was part 2 of 7 parts of my bookshelf tour. Thanks a lot to my daughter for filming, so I had my hands free to take out the books and present them. Thanks again for watching. I'm looking forward to receiving your comments. Hope to see you next time. Take care and bye.